Welcome to The Explainer, where we break down big ideas. Today, we're jumping into a really fascinating distinction between two ways of knowing, and we're drawing it all from a powerful 17th century text on spiritual wisdom. So let's just dive right into this question. On the surface, it seems pretty simple, right? But it's actually at the very core of a deep philosophical and, spiritual debate. Our source material really frames this by exploring two fundamentally different paths to knowledge, one that relies on the mind and another that relies on the heart. So here's our game plan. We're going to start by laying out these two paths. Then we'll take a closer look at the way of the mind and the way of the heart. After that, we'll put the scholar and the saint head to head, which will bring us to the big takeaway, that huge difference between just knowing about something and truly knowing it. Okay, so the text kicks things off by presenting us with a fundamental choice. It basically argues that when it comes to divine truth, you've got two options. You can either look for it outside of yourself, or you can find it deep within. Here's a great way to think about it. The distant path, that's like studying a map. You learn all the names of the towns, the lengths of the rivers, all the facts and figures. The intimate path, though, is like actually traveling through that country, experiencing the culture, feeling the ground under your feet. One is all about abstract information. The other is about a lived, real experience. All right, first up, let's explore that distant path, what our source calls the way of the mind. This is the path of the scholar, the academic, the scientist. It's all about using our brain power, our intellect, to figure out the world. This is the kind of knowledge you get from a university or a textbook, right? It's structured, it's logical, and it's all based on piling up external facts and theories. But the text makes a pretty bold claim here. This type of knowledge can tell you about God, but it can never, ever lead you to actually know God. And these are the tools of the trade for the scholar. You've got reason, logic, theology, and they're used to dissect and analyze absolutely everything, even scripture. It gets treated more like a textbook to be studied rather than a living truth to be experienced. And our source really doesn't pull any punches with its critique. It argues that this purely intellectual approach is spiritually empty. It might look like it's nourishing, like bread or fruit, but it offers zero real substance. It can even be dangerous, described as poisonous honey mixed with dirt. Ouch. And this leads to a huge warning from the text. This whole pursuit of knowledge for its own sake, it doesn't lead to wisdom, it leads to pride. The whole goal shifts from wanting genuine insight to just collecting facts to show off how smart you are. So now let's flip the coin and look at the alternative, the way of the heart. The source calls this the intimate path, or even the science of the saints, a kind of knowledge that you don't find in books, but inside yourself. This isn't about learning things, it's about a direct, intuitive kind of knowing. The text describes it as a wisdom that's almost infused right into the soul. It's a felt sense of connection, not a list of facts you have to memorize. I love this slide because it shows that inner journey so beautifully. It's not some rigid checklist, but more like a natural progression of experience. It all starts with this light, a humbling awareness, which then sparks a burning love. That love then settles into a peaceful rest and finally leads to a feeling of inner fullness, where you just don't need anything else. And here is the absolute key difference. While the way of the mind can so easily lead to pride, the way of the heart is built on the complete opposite, humility. It starts with realizing how small you are in the face of something so vast. So the end goal here isn't to build yourself up with knowledge, but to actually surrender yourself completely. It's about union, not accumulation. It's this idea of disappearing into a reality that's so much bigger than you are. Okay, so we've looked at the two paths. Now let's put the scholar and the saint, the ultimate examples of these two ways, directly side by side. This is where the contrast gets really sharp. This table just lays it all out, doesn't it? I mean, the contrast is just so stark. Look at the goal. The scholar wants to accumulate knowledge, while the saint wants to experience union. The scholar's method is all logic and study from outside sources, but the saint's is humility and surrender to what's inside. And most importantly, look at the outcome. One path can lead to pride and emptiness, while the other leads to humility, wisdom, and peace. It's a world of difference. The source claims that the scholar's words, no matter how smart or eloquent they sound, are just superficial. They might hit your ears, but they have no real power to get into your spirit or to actually change you. But on the other hand, the wisdom of the saint isn't found in some big, elaborate speech. It's expressed through their very being, through their actions. Their wisdom is something they live, not just something they talk about. So, after going through these two very different paths, what's the central message that this 17th century text is trying to leave us with? Well, it all boils down to one critical distinction. And here we are, the ultimate takeaway. You can read every single book on theology. You can memorize every sacred text. But the source argues that true wisdom isn't about what you know, it's about how you know it. The real transformation comes from that direct, internal experience. The source gets really pointed here about that first path, the way of the mind. It suggests a lot of scholars are just driven by what it calls human curiosity. It's about satisfying an intellectual itch, not genuinely surrendering to truth. And because of that, this path is seen as second best. The motive is just intellectual, so they might never actually find the very thing they're supposedly seeking. And so, this centuries-old text leaves us with a question that feels incredibly modern. In our age of just endless information, where we can know about literally anything with a few clicks, what's the real value of direct experience? The source is challenging us to think about how we balance all the knowledge we're constantly consuming with the quiet wisdom that we can only ever find within.
For more spiritual resources, visit lokaken.ai.